everyone. This is Professor Aditi Bhutoria, and I'm a member of the IIM Calcutta Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Our initiative, IIMCreate, aims to bring into focus entrepreneurial ventures which have been launched by IIM Calcutta alumni and have had substantial impact in India and around the world in terms of creating millions of jobs and sizable revenues to spur economic and social development. On that note, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome our special guests today, Mr. Rajan Sethuraman and Mr. Ramesh Hariharan. So Rajan is the CEO of LatentView Analytics, a trusted analytics partner to the world's most recognized brands. Rajan's current focus is on building deeper industry expertise, consulting capabilities and products, which are aimed at helping leading Fortune 500 organizations to leverage the power of data and analytics. Rajan has over 20 years of consulting as well as diverse experiences, including strategy management at Accenture and KPMG. Further, Rajan has worked with several Indian and multinational organizations in the oil and gas and mining and metal sectors on a broad spectrum of strategic and operational initiatives. Rajan holds a bachelor's degree from BITS Pilani in engineering and a postgraduate diploma in management from our very own Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. Welcome, Rajan. Alongside this, I also have with me Ramesh Hariharan, who is a co-founder of LatentView Analytics. He has nearly 20 years of experience again in the data analytics industry. At LatentView, Ramesh has helped to recruit the first 100 people, acquire early clients, and set up the delivery processes, training people in all kinds of analytic roles. Today, he focuses on innovation, new ideas, and still enjoys coding and learning new technologies. Well, Ramesh is an alumnus of IIT Madras, and just like Rajan, a fellow IIM Calcutta alumni, and lives in Atlanta, US. Ramesh, a very big welcome to you as well.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Lovely. So Rajan and Ramesh, with me is Dr. Shubhranshu Sanyal as a CEO of IIM Calcutta Innovation Park, and Jaideep Sandane, who is the president of IIM Calcutta ECell. He's a second-year MBA student and extremely enterprising. So welcome, Shubhranshu and Jaideep. They are going to take the floor from me after I start the initial few questions. So I think I would like to start from the basics for both of you. And every story starts somewhere. My question to you is, how did the analytics journey start for LatentView? How did the process begin? Ramesh, would you like to start?
Yeah, I would like to take that question. And the analytics journey for LatentView has a IIM Calcutta connection as well, right? So Venkat and me were both alumnus of IIM Calcutta, and I was, working in Cognizant in 2005 to 6 in the analytics division of Cognizant. And one of my goals at that time was to go into an entrepreneurial venture, and I was looking at partners, and I was looking at people who can join me in this journey. And at that time, I saw a post from Venkat in the IIMC alumni board. So that was what actually connected us together, right? And then I spoke to Venkat and Pramad, and I met with them. And I had the technical chops and the background that can help get this off the ground. And Venkat had a deep amount of business development experience, as well as very strong analytics experience as well, both Venkat and Pramad. And we decided to take this forward. And I think Venkat had already incorporated the company and so on, and then I joined, and that's how I was employee number 2 after Venkat, and Pramad joined us very soon afterwards. And that's how it started. And I also would like to take a little bit to explain the context of why analytics at that time, right? So we called ourselves LatentView Analytics. The reason is because, and I was also working in Cognizant at that time. So our idea was to, when we talked to clients in 2005, a lot of them were talking about what we call as advanced analytics or statistical modeling, by which it was known at that time, right? So they believed that most of analytics at the time was just IT driven. It was all about building data warehouses and maybe reports. And uh, companies saw the potential of leveraging, advanced analytics on all the data, that investments that they have made in collecting and curating all the data. And there was a tremendous amount of potential and opportunity, and all the analysts and all the enterprises were talking about it. And we believe that what IT guys did to what the Infosys and TCS and all those kind of companies did to IT, we can do for analytics. And that's the kind of analogy we had at that time when we started this one. So me coming from an analytics background, and Venkat and Pramad coming from credit analytics background as well, actually helped us tremendously. And that was the kind of context in which we all met in 2005, 2006.
Thanks, Ramesh. But surely this would have been a difficult journey when you started off. What were some of the earlier challenges that you faced, and how did you really address them? I think that would be a great lesson for our listeners to understand your journey better.
Yeah, sure. So I think there was a lot of challenges, but I was also very, I was expecting these kind of challenges. It's not like as if we didn't expect to have any of these challenges. Obviously, we all took a lot of, first thing is we all took a lot of pay cut to bootstrap this venture, right? And our immediate objective was to find good clients, right? I think that is the main thing. You need to find businesses who can trust you with their data and analysis. We are a young and fledgling company, but we had a great pedigree and background, right? In the sense that we were all alumni of IITs and IIMs, and we have also worked in multinational corporations. Venkat had great amount of experience working in across the world, right? So he was based out of Europe for some time, so that he was able to easily connect to clients in the West, and he was able to articulate the value proposition very clearly. But the challenge was really figuring out who we are, and also figuring out where we are going to get our initial business from. And I think some of the alumni connections made that initial process easy. But easy in the sense that we did, scrape by for some time initially, at least, right? It's not like we had an anchor client who gave us a lot of money as soon as we started this business. No, that's not how it started. So we had to kind of fight our way through. We met a lot of people in the initial days, and Venkat believes that there is no resistance to persistence, right? I think that kind of philosophy was born in these early days, I think, right? So that's one challenge that we overcame, and we had the timing on our side. We also did the right thing in terms of talking to the right people and so on. So initially, we landed a few clients that gave us the cushion to invest in more people. The second challenge is delivery, right? So while we all were aspiring to do a lot of advanced analytics, every client situation is very different. And so we took on, problem solving for some of our clients. We were not exactly experts in the kind of problems we are solving, right? So we had to roll up our sleeves and get things done. And we also needed a lot of people to get things done. So we had to recruit, this industry was very new at that time, right? So it was not like you had, tens of thousands of people available in your city. And it was just a few captives of financial services companies who had this kind of practice in India. So we were really pioneers in India at that time, and we didn't have a captive bunch of people or talent that we can tap into immediately. So that was another big challenge, in the sense that we had to find the right talent. So finding the right clients, finding the right talent. I think these are the two major challenges. And then also ensuring that work gets done. So it was new for our clients. It was new for us also, right? So we all had to kind of learn on the job on how to get things done and how to put in place processes for delivery. And of course, the fact that I at least had a lot of technical chops and technical depth coming from my Oracle and Cognizant days. That was helpful. And Venkat also rolled up his sleeves in helping us really figure out how to manage clients and how to keep them engaged and how to be truly a client partner rather than just doing what they tell us to do, right? So it was a collaborative effort. Pramad also pitched in tremendously in terms of how to be very disciplined and how to be analytical and focused and so on. So yeah, I think these were the challenges. And also the challenges of, there was always this challenge of whether we should, the question of whether we should take funding or whether we should go, bootstrapped and things like that, right? What kind of culture do you want to set for the company? What kind of people do you want to hire? All of those it required a lot of thinking on our part in the early days.
Fantastic. I think there were some great points there. I think starting from persistence to really creating the correct talent pool, at an early stage, which would be, I'm sure, very challenging. But the way you met it, like kind of getting hands-on experience and building your company step by step is absolutely encouraging. I would ask Shubhranshu to come here because who better than him to start talking about this entire aspect of building a company and also raising the funding. Shubhranshu?
Yeah, thanks, Aditi. First, Rajan, Ramesh, and the entire LatentView Analytics team, congratulations for closing a real blockbuster IPO, which I believe is the dream for any startups, any startup. And for your information, at IIM Calcutta, now we have IIM Calcutta Innovation Park, which works very closely with CEI. And this innovation park actively supports startups with incubation services. Whatever challenges you have mentioned, they all go through these very similar challenges, but in different ways. So let me continue the discussion on challenges. So one challenge that we hear from the startups, or rather when we talk to the startups, we find out that, there is no scenario where you are the only player in the market, right? There is always competition or substitutes in different form, right? Now, when we are starting new in a technology space, obviously the big players are there, like TCS, Cognizant, and all who had some kind of services. There are new players coming up. So at various phases of your journey, you have faced competition, right? Different kinds. Still, today also as we are speaking, the space has changed and new competitors are there, right? So it's a challenge to continuously differentiate your offerings so that you provide unique value to the customers. So our startups would like to know that how do you do that, in a technology services space? So may I request your thoughts or advice or how you did it actually? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let me take the question, and Ramesh, feel free to chip in. I think it's also a question about focus, because it's hard to differentiate on too many things. So I would say that a real big aid in our quest for differentiating ourselves has been this philosophy that we will focus on a select few things. There are a few dimensions on which we said that we will define the focus. Now, one from a geography perspective. After we made the pivot from India to the US market, we said that let's just double down on the US market. It's a large enough market, and let's focus there, right, in terms of building the business. Secondly, by a quirk of fate, we initially landed in the West Coast, right, the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, which is basically home to all the large tech companies. And our first few accounts also happened to be in the technology sector. And one thing led to another, and we said that let's also double down on technology as a space. In some way, the technology focus has helped us a great deal in the ensuing years, because one big differentiator that we bring to the table today is a very deep and rich understanding of the digital native ecosystem. Most tech companies, they tend to interact with their consumers through online and digital channels. And that makes a plethora of data available, and analyzing all of that data and making sense of customer behavior, right, challenges and opportunities has been a mainstay of what we do. So that is one very, very important differentiator that we bring to the table. A third area of focus was that we said we'll work with large Fortune 500 companies. We didn't want to kind of expend our energy on too many accounts, now having a long tail. So even today, with the current size that we are at, we work with about 50 plus companies, right? We don't have too much of a long tail. And with every one of the relationships, we look for a substantial partnership, right? And a relationship where we are not just helping solve a sliver of a problem here and there, but instead we are their trusted analytics partner on a fairly broad spectrum of challenges, right, that they have. So these three areas of focus, right, in some sense, have helped sharpen the kind of messaging that we've been able to take into the market, and it has also paid dividends. The other big thing that we said is, like, we will focus on the tough to solve problems, not go after work at the commodity end of the spectrum, where it is very hard to differentiate, right, in any case. We said that let's focus more on the complex, fuzzy, ill-defined problems. My background is in management and strategy consulting, right, as Aditi shared during the introduction. And one thing that attracted me to LatentView, right, when I came on board, was that the nature of the problems that LatentView Analytics was solving was very, very similar to my earlier business consulting, management consulting days. Only thing that was a big difference was that now we were using data, math, statistics, right, to solve the problem. So going after tough, ill-defined problems and addressing them, right, using the power of data analytics was a fairly important differentiator as well. Now, one way by which we make all of this happen is to bring a very interesting trio of skills to the table, right? There is, of course, the technology skills that are important in this space, because you need the technology tools, right, to be able to do the analysis. The math and the statistics skills are also super important, because the algorithms that we use today for solving many of the problems, while they have existed for several decades, just a deeper understanding of those algorithms and how do you use the technology tools to apply them in the context of the business, I think that's a very important skill set. A third most important skill is really the business understanding, right? The ability to understand the context in which the businesses are operating, the most pertinent trends within that context, and what are the challenges and opportunities that arise within that context because of those trends playing out. That is a very, very important skill set. So this combination of business, math, and technology, right, and using data to solve the problems, that's really the mainstay of the work that we do. And assembling a team, a crack team of people who can do this time and again in a repeated, high quality fashion, right? That is really what the differentiator is. So as you pointed out earlier, right, this is a space that several different organizations are approaching from different vantage points. We see large IT service providers and systems integration firms coming in from a tech vantage point. We see companies, strategy consulting firms, including like McKinsey, BCG, for example, now approaching it from a very business-driven standpoint. And there are product companies, right, that come from a tech standpoint as well. We have a very unique and interesting position where we are able to bring together all of these skills in good measure to solve the problems at hand. I think that's a pretty big differentiator. So these are some things that we have honed over the years on the back of one, defining the focus areas, as I pointed out earlier, and then building the skill sets that are relevant, right, to delivering on the focus. So Ramesh, if you want to add anything, let's go ahead.
No, I think you've done it. You've covered it very comprehensive, Raj. So nothing to add.
Thanks, Rajan and Ramesh. See, the takeaway for the startups would be whether they are in the same technology space or it doesn't matter. The points I would like to highlight is, number one, having a focus, which we see lacking in many of the early stage startups. They want to do too many things at the same time, right? So that's a very valuable insight. And then the other ones, which is very important for any startup, would be to understand the need of the customer well, or the business of the customer well, right? And then develop solutions around that and attempt to solve the tough problems. which itself will be a differentiator. So that's fantastic. And I think all startups should learn from this. The team, you also mentioned that how to assemble a crack team who would be willing to take up any challenge. So I think a lot of learnings for the startups. Now, again, another question that most of the startups will have, and we sometimes don't do a good job in answering this question is, now see, everybody is influenced by the unicorns, right? So that's good. So many youngsters have a dream to become a unicorn. But then when they approach the investors, they hear different kind of advices. And they see that some of the unicorns, many of the unicorns are growing and they are burning money. So if you look at the accounts or the balance sheet or the profit and loss, you'll see there's a huge negative there. But they're growing and they're considered as unicorn. So they come back and ask us the question that whatever you teach in the B schools that have a very strong bottom line, right? Profit, that's the main motive of the business. So everybody is confused. They question that, right? So the same question I'm going to share with you, since you have seen the whole game starting from scratch, that what is important? What do you think a startup should actually follow? They're very much confused.
Yeah, I don't think there can be one correct answer to this this question, right? I think different industries and sectors call for maybe different kinds of approaches and peculiarities, right? Depending on the timing as well. Industries also mature over a period of time. So what might be in focus and important at a particular time may not be the one in focus, right? At a more mature stage. For us, we sensed the need for these services, that we were going to be providing from very early on, and we knew that the services that we brought to the table have a very direct and specific bearing on the business results of the clients that we were working with, right? Whether it is revenue enhancement or cost reduction or customer churn, right? Or whether it is marketing dollars and return that they were getting on it, whether it is a supply chain cost, every one of these, right? They had a top line, a bottom line kind of an impact. And therefore, in some sense, the way we sold these services, the way we priced these services, I would say that it was fairly straightforward. I mean, we were able to demonstrate value, and it's only appropriate, right, that you get paid well for the services. So from a very early stage in our company's history, we have been focused, as I said earlier, right, on challenging problems, and therefore we have been able to command the premiums that come along with it, right? Premiums in terms of how we price the services that we provide. So I think from a very early stage, therefore, the mindset was one of what we call good old-fashioned profitable growth, right? I mean, put your head down, make sure that you're going after work that is valued within the market. Clients see the impact that you're creating, and therefore they're willing to pay top dollar, right, for the services that you provide. We also said that we will work with clients who are Fortune 500 companies, deep pockets, who see data and analytics as a very, very important lever, right, in the execution of their own business goals and strategies. So a combination of all these meant that we were in a profitable space. All we had to do was to make sure that we are going after the right problems with the right clients and assembling the right talent and the teams, right, that can win that kind of work. So that mantra and philosophy has stayed with us right through the years. So much so that when I came on board in 2016, right, and took a look at some of the work that we were doing, we actually decided to take a hard call that some of the lower margin work where we were not working in a long-term relationship model, but instead we were only providing point expertise, right, in a staff augmentation capacity, that we took the tough call of actually getting out of that business, that book of business. And we said that it's all right. I mean, maybe we'll experience a little bit of turbulence on the revenue trajectory, but from a profitability and a margin perspective, that makes a lot of sense. And not just from that margin perspective, also in terms of the enduring relationships that we can build with the clients and also the employees, right? It made all around sense. So it was a fairly easy decision for us to make, even though it meant it will impact the revenue profile, right, and the trajectory that we had. So the philosophy of focusing on profitable growth has been something now that we have adhered to right through. And in today's context and circumstance, as you said, there are so many companies that are actually talking a lot more about building customers, right, customer base, and right, acquiring market share and so on. It can seem to be a little odd, right, and it might seem surprising that okay, here is a company that has focused on profitable growth now right through, and they've stuck to it. But I think it was well received by the market. I mean, going by the reception that we saw from the market and investors for the IPO, right, in terms of the subscription as well as the subsequent, the price of the stock in the market. I think profitable growth, margins, creating value for shareholders, I think these are all fairly strong principles, and they have come back in a fairly significant fashion, right, in terms of how the market views it. So we are very happy with it. Going forward as well, I mean, we will definitely want to adhere to this philosophy. I mean, there will always be plenty of things that one can do. We don't want to dilute the positioning. We want to continue to stay a premium provider of services, solving the tough and complex problem. And of course, we want to stay profitable, right, in our quest to do that.
Thanks, Rajan. I mean, the message that I'm taking back for the startups is that, nowadays the startups think that if I don't get a VC investment, my organization is not worth it, or, it's not worth that much. But your example that proves that if you have a profitable model, sometime, may not be immediately, but over the period of time, market would realize the value of it. And when you go to the market and go to the public, you will get the value that you actually deserve. So it doesn't matter whether you get a VC funding at the initial stage or not, right? So I think that's very important message for the startups. I see every day they are worried about that I'm not getting much VC interest and all. So
yeah, I mean, the only thing is I'll temper it. I mean, I wouldn't say that this is a model that can work for everybody. That's why I started off with that statement. Yes. I think you do need to look at the sector that you're playing in, right? And I mean, we were successful as a bootstrap business because of the area that we decided to focus on and the way we went about it. I'm sure that the models that a startup company, they would need to be cognizant of what their context is, right? And then adopt the right approach. But in general, I mean, I think over a period of time, market valuation, right, and shareholder value will depend on the ability to create enterprise value, right, earnings. These things become important, and you do need to come back to them, right, at some point in time.
So at least we can show example of one company which is focused on the basics since day one, and are successful in the market, right? Is successful in the market. Yeah. So I think now I will hand over to Jaideep, who will graduate very soon and join the corporate world. So I believe he would have a lot of questions from the students' angle. So thanks for great insights. Over to you, Jaideep.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So one of the questions I had was that we see that the relationship between technology and business is increasingly becoming very closer to it, and especially after the pandemic. So how do you think is AI and analytics going to transform this business? And what is the impact which is happening right now, as well as how do you see the future 10 years from now? And how are you preparing for it at your firm?
Ramesh, I'm going to ask you to take a shot at it, and then I'll chip in with my thoughts.
Sure. So AI and ML is everywhere today, and they are transforming all kinds of businesses, whether it's old-fashioned asset-heavy businesses or whether it's being data-driven, right? I won't say AI, ML necessarily, data-driven foundation. And today, if you look at the stock market capitalization, 7 out of the top 10 businesses worldwide in terms of stock market capitalization is all data-driven companies, right? And this, just compared to what the situation was even 25 years ago, nobody foresaw this thing happening, right? And AI and machine learning and technology is very deeply entwined into the operations of these companies, right? whether you take Facebook or Google or Apple or any of these guys, right? So I think any of these large businesses, fundamentally data-driven, and these are the larger ones in terms of valuation. And they are also the most profitable and the fast-growing ones. So not just in terms of sheer valuation, but also in terms of profitability and growth. And these companies have fundamentally transformed the lives of consumers worldwide. And if you look at AI/ML for businesses as such, right? And that's the space we are helping and we are playing in, right? So, companies are undertaking this whole thing, this sort of digital transformation. What this basically means is they are digitizing all of their, physical processes. So whether it's, everything from, manufacturing to production to supply chain to the front end of the businesses, such as customer acquisition, retention, etc. Everything is becoming digital. And because it's becoming digital, there is a lot of data that you can collect on all of these things, right? And because of that, there is a potential to apply AI, analytics, machine learning, in order to, do many things. There are many kinds of value that you can derive through these, right? And most importantly, first thing is you can use this data to acquire new customers, retain your existing customers, and drive, acquire, cross-sell to existing customers and increase the value of these customers, right? So I think that's one you can do. And secondly, there are other ways of monetization also, right? You can identify best use of resources, right? For example, Uber, Lyft, and PayPal. Uber and Lyft, for example, are just taking old-fashioned taxi and completely transforming them into a very high value business by simply matching customer demand with supply, right? So those are new innovative business models that are coming into play, completely driven by data, completely driven by analytics and AI, right? And there are many other ways of monetization as well, right? And I think, so Rajan, maybe you want to provide your own views on this.
Yeah, maybe a bit more philosophical kind of a perspective, right? A lot of the work that we do, right, or even other companies do, right, using the power of data and analytics, at the heart of that is this great interest in understanding behavior, right? Whether it is human behavior or whether it is process behavior or whether it is machine behavior, right? And today you see that humans and processes and machines interact more and more, right, through digital channels and mechanisms. So there is a ton of data, right, that is being generated, all of that. Understanding behavior is a very complex thing, right? It is easier said than done. I mean, and we all experience that in the personal relationships that we have, right, with our family, with our friends, spouse, children, right? It is impossible to get into the mind of another person. The only thing you can do is to look at manifest behavior, right? What do they say? What do they do, right? What do they behave? And then you make inferences about what is going on inside their mind, right? A lot of the work that companies are trying to do, right, in terms of understanding whether it is consumer behavior or employee behavior, patient behavior, citizen behavior, right? When it comes to government, for example, it is all about like, how do I better understand that individual? How do I better understand the processes that surround the provisioning of the services and the products I put in front of that person? How do I understand machines that are part of the system, right? And all of this is possible through the data that is being generated. I think we are still only scratching the surface though, because you just cannot get to the heart of all of these things just with the current amount of data that is coming. So there's going to be an even larger explosion of data, right, in the coming years. Already, you know that we all wear these gadgets on our wrist, wearables, and they're starting to generate a ton of data about things like your heart rate, right, your stress level, right, and they can add to the nuances, but also they add to the complexity of who a human is, right, and when you're trying to understand and interpret behavior. So I think we are just scratching the surface on everything. As this data explosion continues, there will be more data, richer, nuanced data available, but of course, subject to data privacy controls, confidentiality, right? I think in the days to come, in some sense, people will have more power and influence over the data that is being generated about them, right? In whichever context they might be, whether they are in the office, whether they are in a shopping mall, right? Whether they are inside a hospital room, for example, it's data about them, right? About who they are, and they will have more control and influence over the data, and they will be able to choose who they share the data with and for what purpose the data is going to be shared. Technologies like blockchain, for example, right, will come to the fore in helping and making that happen. So phenomenal possibilities ahead of us, right, in terms of what we can do with all of this data. So that is a really exciting space for us. So that's what we are also really gung-ho about.
Got it. And also, last week, I spoke to the students' e-cell, where I talked about, Rajan is talking about a philosophical. Also, I was talking a little bit more on the ground about, what are the 5 ways of monetizing data? There are, n number of ways, but if you were to pick any 5, I was saying basically that, you can look at getting more profitable customers. Companies are also using data to make their products better, right? Google, for example, gets better continuously because people provide constant feedback by clicking on the search results, so they can refine the relevance and so on, right? There's also saving costs through improved efficiencies. And today, if you look at all of the fraud and risk models, which keep us safe online, as well as all our money, transactions are safe simply because there is a tremendous amount of, models, machine learning models, which are constantly scanning our behavior and flagging unusual behavior to prevent fraud. Right? Apart from this, there is also this, bartering data, real-time matching, and those kind of business models coming in. So from an enterprise standpoint, there is tremendous amount of potential. We are just scratching the surface, and we are just getting started on these analytics. There's a lot more that needs to be done. One challenge, though, is we need to get all this data lined up and make sure that it's available, accessible to the right users. It could be, people, or it could be machines that need this data, right? So that plumbing also needs to be part of this whole journey.
Right, definitely, sir. And it's very interesting that you mentioned that there are a lot more opportunities these days in terms of what we can do with the data, with the cross domain applications, and so many possibilities of developing something and applying this data. So one of the interesting things that we saw was that a lot of students are actually really fascinated by this, and a lot of them actually want to develop something. So we know that there is data. We know that there are a lot more applications that we can put it into. How does a student start? How does he get into analytics? So what would your advice be?
Should I take this, Rajan? Right. So there are many different types of analytics, and there are many different types of people, right? So I talked about what we call as, so if you look at the whole analytics data supply chain or data value chain, right? There are a lot of aspects to this. One is, first of all, you need to be able to bring all this data together, right? Ingest the data and then transform it, make it ready for analysis. That's one whole aspect, what we call as data engineering. Second is, you need to be able to look at this data and marry that with the business context, and also be able to use that to answer business questions on what is happening, why something is happening, and what should companies do about it. That's more both tactical, operational, and strategic, right? Those are the kind of questions that managers need answers to, right? And the more senior your audience is, the more impactful your answers will be, right? So that's the second kind of thing. A third aspect is about building models or trying to predict what is likely to happen. So what is likely to happen in the short to medium term, right? Nobody can predict what's going to happen in the very long term, but at least in the short to medium term, what is likely to happen? So how are customers likely to behave, so that I can shape my company's strategy, right? Which products should I stock at what quantity in this one, in which store, and how much, right? So those are the kind of questions. Or which marketing offer should I send to this client? So those are this customer. So those are some of the more granular questions at scale that we need to be able to answer, which involves predictions. And maybe you can just take it to a next level and talk about optimization, right? Given all my constraints and given this forecast, how do I maximize the impact with this budget that I have, and so on. I mean, if you divide this into this spectrum, depending on what your interest is, you can get into any of these areas, right? I mean, you can't be a master of all of them or even one because it's too vast. So you can have a technology play. If you're very technically focused and interested, you can have a technology play. If you like machine learning and things like that, or statistics and math, you can actually get into analytics from that direction also, right? Or if you are just a design person or a strategic person, you can come at it from a strategy play, or for example, in IIMC, we do a lot of case study analysis, right? So that's all. If you really enjoy doing those kind of things, then you'll probably enjoy ad hoc exploratory analysis, right? So there are many different ways of entering into analytics, but whatever it is, right, it will be good if you can get your hands dirty with some data and do some analysis. And I think that would be my approach to doing things, right? Because today I think there is tremendous amount of potential, but there is also a lot of people aspiring to get into this field. So there is a bit of a competition. So you need to stand out, and the way to stand out in this field is to actually do something hands-on.
Yeah, one thing I'll maybe add on is I've heard this in a different context about the T model of learning, where you have this broad spectrum understanding, but maybe not to a great level of depth, but you need that broad spectrum understanding, right? In the context of data analytics, I would say that broad spectrum will encompass the business understanding, the math and statistics and algorithm, and the technical understanding, right? The business, math, and technology. But probably choose one of these, right? To go deep on the T part of it, right? The vertical arm. And again, each of these are very broad areas. I mean, I can say with no qualms that after 15 years of working in the oil and gas space, I just knew a sliver of oil and gas, okay, in any sense of the word expertise, right? If I were to say that I'm good in one place, no, it was just in one particular area, right, within oil and gas. So each of these functional areas or these industries, they're all so vast, you can spend a lifetime in there and then still make only a very small dent, right, to what is happening in that space. But I think it's good to pick something and go deep so that you really understand that well. But the ability to connect the dots because of having that broad perspective is equally important. I think today, more and more, with the emergence of no code, low code, right, product models, which make it very simple and easy to do drag and drop without going into depth a great deal, right? It can actually be a little bit of a challenge because sometimes you feel that or you get this mistaken impression, right, that I'm a data scientist or I can solve problems without really knowing a whole lot about anything, right? Solving problems is not just about dragging and dropping things, right? You need to go deep into one area, but the ability to connect the dots is something that one has to acquire over a period of time. So I would say that look out for opportunities for that. And it can be these kind of skills and experiences can come in different walks of life. I mean, it's not restricted only to the academic learning that you do. It is also in relation to the extracurriculars, the interactions that you have with your peers, right? Everything is important. One thing that I would like to say, for example, is that Venkat, right, who's our founder, he was fantastic at connecting the dots between people. I mean, even today, he is the person who holds the batch together, right, on any new initiative. So, for example, we missed out on the 25th year reunion last year. We couldn't come to campus because of the pandemic, and we are all hoping that we can get back in the March timeframe. And he's the person, right, who's whipping us all to make sure that that you're all coming in, right, and answering a query, poll, and all that. So this connecting the dots point, I said, it's a philosophical thing, right? You need to have that mindset and approach it from that perspective. Then you'll start making a difference.
Definitely, sir. And the three major takeaways that I can, take from your answers was that, firstly, to have a focus which has been the mantra for the firm as well, and developing, maybe having a sort of an expertise in one of those, as well as having that continual learning process, which I believe that as students it will never end. So now that we're actually ready to go out of campus, so the nostalgia is already hitting, and we are very excited to learn about how the campus was during your time, and what was your campus life like. So
yeah, maybe I'll go first. Yeah, I mean,
sure.
Our batch was the first batch to occupy the new hostel. So that is a interesting thing for us. I mean, it was a tough decision though, right? Because even then, Ramanujan Hall and Old Hostel was the only hostel that had the women there, right? And while that attraction of saying that staying close to the action was interesting, but we also wanted to see, okay, here is a completely new building, new hostel, right? That's been built. So I was one of the guys who chose new hostel. Sometimes have a bit of a regret about saying that, okay, let me go there and then have a new room to myself, right? As opposed to staying closer to the tire and where the action is. But yeah, that is one thing I remember, right? From those days. We had a great time, especially on particular kinds of courses, Indian economic and political history, for example, courses that we had. A fantastic mix of opinion, right? Coming in from die-hard capitalist thinking, as well as completely far left thinking, right? Socialist models, Mahalanobis, and how those things make a difference. So just to see the juxtaposition of those two, right, in class after class, right, where they come and talk about those things, I think that actually created that sense of curiosity, right? Debating in one's own mind in terms of how do you approach different kinds of complex situations. I think that those were all great memories. Of course, I mean, all the usual stuff, right? PNR and the XLRI thing, right? The IIM Excel meet. I mean, those things were all, I mean, I'm sure that you guys continue the tradition even today. I mean, the couple of things I remember, I mean, from my time, I mean, the whole tire thing, the stealing the tire and taking it away. I think in our year again, it used to be between Old Hostel and White House, right? Ramanujan Hall and White House. The White House guys come and take the tire away, and then the OS guys have to get it back. So our year, because we were the first to occupy the new hostel, we said that let's beat the WH guys to that, right? And then we stole it from them and then took it away to the new hostel, and then they had to bring it back. So that is another interesting memory from my times. Ramesh might have a few.
Sure. So adding to all those memories, there is one which we had. Our batch was the first batch in which they made attendance compulsory.
Oh, okay. That's terrible.
And it lasted only for one batch. So both my junior batch and the senior batch, they had this benefit of having no compulsory attendance requirements. Of course, that didn't change much in terms of life here. So we always had kind of proxies and things like that happening also. But IMC life was one of the, I mean, I still look at those 2 years as some of the best days of my life in terms of the kind of relationships we made out there, etc. I was also part of this ISG, or the Internet Services Group, which was actually instrumental in keeping the website alive and keeping the emails going and so on and so forth, right? So that was another of the distractions, that we had, and met a lot of friends. Experimented with a lot of cuisines both inside and outside the campus. Traveled, somewhat extensively around the area. So all that is, fantastic memories even today. And I've not visited Calcutta for a long time, but next time I'm in India, I'm planning to come back there. So it's been a phenomenal 2 years, which I'll never forget, and which has actually shaped me, today in being what I am.
That's really great, sir. And we also hope that people from our batch also when we are actually passed out and we also reminisce about these things, it would be a very different experience. So I can understand. And we actually are at a close of the interview. So if Aditi ma'am, you want to take over.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to conclude this session after we ended on this note of nostalgia. I think the Institute, IIM Calcutta, connects all of us in one way or another. And I'm extremely thankful to both you and Rajan and Ramesh for coming in and sharing your journey, your insights, starting from when you were students at IIMC to eventually creating LatentView Analytics. The interesting bits for me were the ideas of Trinity in terms of business, maths, and technology, which combine together in your organization. How data can be used to understand complex user and consumer behaviors, not just for immediate gains, but really to create value and to achieve the good old profitable growth, which is reliable and sustainable. And more importantly, I think we at IIMCreate truly appreciate and celebrate, the achievements that you've made so far and the accomplishments that you've shared with us. We are sure that your insights would encourage and assist our viewers as well as the IIMC students to create their own entrepreneurial success story. And, we'll have many such encouraging stories coming up post listening to your session. So on behalf of IIM Calcutta Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and of course, IIM Calcutta Innovation Park, as well as the eCell, Shubhranshu, Balram, and Jaideep here, I would like to thank the both of you for an extremely enriching session. I hope you have a good evening and all the best.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
It was a pleasure having this conversation. Yeah, look forward to more interactions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.